My given name is Susan Barbara Friedman, and now it's Susan Cohn. But everyone calls me Susie, or Grammy, or Fred, or that's about it. Those are my nicknames, but mainly Susie. So my story begins, the earliest I can remember is when I was 4 years old, basically. Of course, I do remember a few other things, but my parents lived on 2020 North 50th Avenue, and it was a little teeny house with what I thought was a giant, huge closet. And later on in life, we ended up going back to this house, and it was very, very teeny. But my older sister, Janice, who was 2 years older than me, and I played all the time in this closet when she would play with me, because she had other things she wanted to do, and I guess I bugged her. I don't know. The other great story I have to tell about Janice is one morning I was in my crib. My crib was in the dining room of our little house, and Janice went in the kitchen before my parents got up on a Sunday and dug out every dry ingredient in my mother's cupboards. She built a big, huge tower, and then for me in front of my crib, and then she started going under my bed, under my crib, and I fell out of my crib on the floor on the tower. And my mother walked in, and all she could say was, "I didn't use anything wet." And that was the story of that I first remember, and I think at that point I may have been 2.5 years old. I remember a few times of my mother's friends would be mainly my dad's cousins, the Blumpkin girls, not Blumpkin girls, rather they were all Gorilla girls who ended up Franny Blumpkin and Frances Batt and Baby Cohn, and I missed somebody, Cynthia Schneider, and everybody had kids the same age, and most of them were boys except for Claudia Cohn and my sister. So they always played together, and then I was the third man because there weren't really any other girls around my age. So there were a lot of times where we had video or movies of a bunch of kids in playpens and a bunch of kids on the swing set, and they were really great times. And as they say, at 4 years old, I moved to 6476 Cummings Street, and that's where I lived out the rest of my teenage years, basically, and college years until I got married. I'm going to step back and talk to you about my grandparents. I had 2 sets of grandparents, the Friedmans and the Wassermans, and I called my grandma and grandpa Friedman Mr. and Mrs. F, because that's what people called them at Borsheim's. And they were both loving grandparents, but in very different ways. Both grandparents came from Russia, although my grandpa Wasserman and grandma Wasserman were born, well, my grandma Wasserman came when she was 2 years old, and my grandpa Wasserman was born in Sheboygan, Wisconsin. And on the other side, my grandpa and grandma came to the United States in 1924. The story goes, my grandpa was from a wealthy family who owned a lumber mill, and my grandma was from a very, very poor family. They lived in a shtetl. It was from somewhere in Minsk, and one day on the train, my grandma had gone to the city to get her mother, Bobby, who I did meet, but I was very young at the time. She died like when I was 3 years old. And she came to the United States, so that's how I met her. But anyway, my grandma was riding in 3rd class, and my grandpa was riding in 1st class, and he said, "Come here, little girl, would you like to sit on my lap?" And that's how they met. And and they ended up getting married. And in 1919, the pogroms started, and my grandma saw her best friend raped and killed by a Cossack. And my grandpa got a gunshot in his leg, and I'm not sure what year they were married, but eventually they decided that on Christmas Eve they would sew shekels into my grandma's coat, and they brought some vodka with them and gave it to the guards and bribed them to get out of the country, which they did. They ended up in Italy, and at that point my grandma had a miscarriage, and they were in Italy for a while, and they ended up arriving in the United States after a horrible boat ride in New York. They went through Ellis Island, and later in life we put their names on a big memorial that you can go see on Ellis Island. It would be under Laser and probably Riva Friedman. But anyway, the story goes they landed in New York, and then they took a train to Omaha because my grandma's sister, Rose Blumpkin, already was in Omaha, and she brought all the rest of her family to Omaha. Anyway, they ended up getting to Omaha July 10th, 1924, and on July 10th, 1925, my father was born. My father was a very smart person, and he had a photographic memory. He was loved by everyone in our community, no matter if they had no money, billions of dollars, no matter what their profession was, or he never could say no to anyone, and he always listened to people and learned a lot by listening, and he never judged anyone. There was one story in his life that a man came into Borsheim's, and he was a farmer, and he said, "I want a really nice ring for my wife." Well, my dad had no idea what kind of money he wanted to spend, and finally he found him, which at that time was a lot of money, an $8,000 ring. And the man had overalls on and started unzipping the overalls, and it ended up that he ended up buying the $8,000 ring, but my dad probably could have sold him a $20,000 ring. He had no idea how much money this man, who didn't look like he had a dime, had. And it taught him a lesson that don't ever judge a person by what they look like. Just, you got to ask questions, and you got to just find out who the person is, not just what he looks like he is. And that's how you, number one, respect people, and number two, never be prejudiced against anybody until you talk to them. I understand if they lie, cheat, or steal, there's a reason not to like them, but you need to find out who and what they are before you make a judgment. So that's the way my father lived, and we'll talk about him later again. But anyway, his family came to the United States, and my grandpa couldn't speak a word of English, so he did what most people did, and he went to work in the packing companies, and he learned English, and he worked there for a while, a long time actually. And my father, when he turned 10, went to sell papers at the Paxton Hotel. And he made more money selling papers than my grandpa made at the packing house. And he took all his money home to his mother. And he always took care of his family, whatever he could do. He had a younger sister, Dorothy, and a 10-year younger brother, Uncle Solly, whose real name is Solomon. And he was named after his great-grandfather. Anyway, onward to the Wasserman side. My grandpa Wasserman, Max Wasserman, lived in Sheboygan, Wisconsin, and his father was a grocer. And my grandma had, I'm pretty sure, 14 children, 7 boys and 7 girls, and she died in 1925 of breast cancer, and all the kids were basically left alone because my grandfather had already died, and the oldest children, which my grandpa Max was, took care of the youngest children. And they were a very artistic family, writing, violin. My uncle Dale Wasserman wrote the play Man of La Mancha. They did all kinds of interesting things, professors. I was especially fond of my Uncle Cy and Aunt Hazel. And at that time there was a TV show, and we always called her Aunt Hazel Witch because we knew that name, but Hazel was a really nice person. So the witch was also, and they lived in Sheboygan, and they came to Omaha a lot to visit my grandpa, and so we saw them a lot. And his brother Bernard was kind of the family historian. He was one of the youngest, and he was very smart, knowledgeable. He was in the furniture making business, and he always would come visit too with his wife. And her name was Adele, and she was a teeny little lady about 4'9", and she was an artist, and I knew her very well also because they always came to Omaha and visit. And once in a while his brothers would pop their heads in, and there was an Uncle Bunny, and I can't remember all the rest. You'll have to look at the family tree. But it was great being able to know some of the brothers. And we would go to California. I think we went once when I was 5, my sister was 7, and we drove there with my sister, myself, and my mother. And that was a treat, and I was very good at puzzles. So when I went to California, everybody gave me puzzles to see how fast I could work them. And that also was really fun. And we lost my sister in a department store, I remember, and they had to page her over the intercom system. But it was fun. And anyway, my grandma lived in Sioux City, and I don't know if she didn't live there all their lives. My grandpa was in the grocery business first, and he was in South Dakota, Pierce, South Dakota, and then I think they ended up, I'm not sure where they ended up, I just know they lived there for a long time. But my mom was born in Esterville, Iowa. But I know he made several moves until he finally decided when it was time for his kids, my mom had 2 brothers, an older brother, Uncle Sidney, and a younger brother, Uncle Jerry. And when it was time for them to start Hebrew school, my grandpa felt he needed to move closer to some place that had a synagogue. So that's when they decided to move to Omaha. And I still remember they lived at 5320 Western Avenue. And we were very close to my grandma and grandpa Wasserman. We had them every Friday night for dinner. And they once took my sister, myself, and my cousin Marilyn, who was my Uncle Sidney's daughter, who was right in between ages of my sister and I, to South Dakota, and we had a ball. And my grandma wouldn't let us climb any rocks, mountains, nothing, because she said if they fell, that my mother would be very mad at her. So we didn't, but we had a great time, and we had a lot of nice experiences with them my grandma died at 69, and I think my grandpa died at 67. They both died very young. My grandma and grandpa Friedman died in their 90s, and they didn't know how to show their love to us, but $5 would be a good way, they thought. And they, instead of hugging and kissing us, gave us $5. And it was just a different way. They had never been taught how to express themselves as my father, and they just didn't know how to do that. So, but we knew they loved us, and they always loved coming over for holidays, and we did do some holidays, Jewish holidays, with my grandma and grandpa Friedman. I remember when I was maybe 6 or 7, we were there, and I'm sure we did others, but we also did holidays with my grandma and grandpa Wasserman until my mother finally started doing the holidays. And we never missed a Passover, Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur. Those were the main ones that we had every year, and we had Hanukkah and Purim, and we always looked forward to all those holidays as children because we knew our family was going to get together. And my grandma and grandpa Friedman died both in their 90s, and most of the Gorelick family, which was my grandma's, did die very late in life, except for one brother who died early, and some were 104 or 109, so they had really good genes. But moving onward, my mother and father met each other at a party that, at the time, Ruthie Rosinski maybe was married, Ruthie Rosinski Sokoloff, and it was right after the war. Well, we'll go back to my father before he got married. My father went to the University of Texas for 1 year, and then the war broke out, and he felt he needed to go, and he at 19 enlisted in he was a Jeep driver in France. And one time he was driving his Jeep, and he ran into his cousin Louis Blumpkin in the middle of France, which is crazy, but they were like brothers because everyone else in their family were girls. So they were like brothers their whole life. And that was a pretty exciting day for both of them. And my dad came back. He was 20 years old, and that's when Ruthie had the party, and she was also best friends with baby Cohn, who was a sister to Louie. And anyway, they fixed my dad up with my mother, and it must have been love pretty much at first sight, because my dad and mom got married when he was 21 and she was 20 in 1946, and that was June 16th, 1946. And in 1948, they had my older sister Janice, and in 1950 I was born on March 15, 1950. And then in 1955, my brother Alan was born on February 28th, 1955. And our family went on growing. That was it as far as children, but we had lots of fun. I had a very happy childhood. I was out playing all the time. I rode my bicycle. I roller skated. I had friends that, Judy Bradford was my best friend, who lived across the street from me, and we'd always go walking around the neighborhood, and a lot of it was not built up yet. We lived in, I don't even know what the name of our neighborhood was, Bagel, because there were a lot of Jewish people in the area. And anyway, we lived next door to Shirley and Herman Weinstein for the whole time we lived in that neighborhood, and the Saunders lived catty corner to us down on Glenwood Road, and I had a good friend, Susie Malnove, that lived behind us also, and friends all over the place. And you used to be able just to walk to your friend's house, no problem, play. We wouldn't sit and call our mom we're coming home or anything. It was pretty safe. All the doors, people left their doors open, and you never knew who was in your house because everybody would go from one house to another house, and it was pretty fun life growing up. It was not so difficult as I feel it is today, when even my children, when I would not allow them to walk to school or home by themselves. So life went on. As far as my Jewish life, we belonged to Bethel Synagogue, and I went to kindergarten there. I went to Sunday school. I went to Hebrew school 1 year, but I told my mom I had to quit because I had a teacher who I won't mention yell every single day. All he did was yell at the kids every time I went. And I said, I just can't stand all that yelling. So my mother let me drop Hebrew school and stay in Sunday school. And that's what I did. And in those days, most girls didn't have bat mitzvahs, so I did not have a bat mitzvah. And when I was 18 years old, I went to the University of Oklahoma my first year. And I was not at all happy with the University of Oklahoma. In those days, you did not go visit a school, but it was just too much partying and not enough learning, except that I was in business school, and it was very difficult. So I didn't test great, and that's why I probably didn't go somewhere else, because everyone in Omaha seemed to go to the University of Oklahoma, pretty much. So I went to Oklahoma. I didn't like it. I applied to several other universities between my freshman and sophomore year. I ended up going to Boston University and graduating there in my fourth year, and I graduated with honors in business school, and I was one of 6 girls in the business school. Nowadays, there are more girls than boys in the business school. But anyway, that's what I was college, and in between my freshman and sophomore year of college, my parents, for graduation, had given me a gift of going to Europe. So I went all through Europe in the summer, flew back to Boston, and went and found housing, and came home, pretty much packed my bags, and went to Boston, which I had never been to big city in my life. The only place I'd ever gone to was when I was 13. I visited my aunt and uncle in California. And so anyway, this was a big change in my life. I was a quiet little, kind of scared, shy girl. It definitely changed my whole outlook on life, and I could see what life was all about. It was more of a learning experience than my business school was, as far as I always loved business, and my dad had, my father had a jewelry store, and I started working with him when I was I started at 4 years old, because he'd take me down on Sundays, and he'd have me do several odd jobs. One day, I had a job of opening up empty boxes, but I found something in a box, and it was a 2-carat diamond. And for the next month, my grandpa, who opened boxes, and the diamond buyer, Morris, who opened boxes, fought. You open a box this way. No, you open the box this way. No, and to see who did open that box. Well, at that time, the diamond was worth maybe $4,000. Today, it'd probably be worth $40,000. It was a very nice diamond, and my dad was proud of me at 4. So I thought, oh, this is good. So I enjoyed being with my father, and I liked all the action, and as I grew older, I just knew that's what I wanted to do. I thought the jewelry business was really fun, and it was a happy business, because you're selling something to people usually on a good occasion or somebody birthday, anniversary, engagement. It was a great business, and we met so many different kinds of people over the years. I worked there every summer of college. When I got married, I continued to work. I still work at 67, and I probably will work till, I hope I work till I die, because I enjoy doing it. I just work a lot less now than I used to. Anyway, so I went to college, graduated, came back to Omaha in June of 1972, and in January of 1973, I went to my cousin's bar mitzvah, Steve Friedman, and his mother happens to be a first cousin to my husband, Marvin, okay? So we met that night, and we started dating, and we got engaged August 7th and married November 11th, 1973. And I had known Marvin, and because he lived at the end of my street, but he was 7 years older than me, so we didn't have a whole lot in common. And his mother made chocolate chip cookies, which I would periodically go over to his house and get one. But I just knew of him. And my mom always said to me, "Watch out with that lady in the red Cadillac." Well, that ended up to be his mother. She had a heavy foot and swung really fast into her driveway, which was at the end of our street. So I guess I had a little relationship with their family before I married him. And when I married him, he was very quiet and shy, and it was kind of perfect for me because I like talking a lot and meeting people and so on. But as he worked side by side with my father, quite interesting. When we got married, he was at National Auto Supply, and his parents were still alive, and his dad was Dave Cohn, and his mother was Lil Seidman Cohn. And they ran away and got married when she was 16, and I don't know how old Dave was, but that's what they did, or 16, and I think she had a child like when she was 17. Aunt Marvin had basically two families. He had a brother who was 17 years older and one who was 11 years older than him, and he had then himself in August 25th, 1942, and he had a sister after that 2 years later, Sharon. And so that was his family. It was his oldest brother's name was Jerry, and his other brother was Ronnie, and himself and Sharon. His mother lived in Lincoln, and his father lived in Omaha before they got married. And then when they got married, they moved in, I don't know exactly when, but they moved in a house on 58th and Underwood. And right when Marvin was born, they built a house on 64th and Cumming Street, and that's where they lived until his father, I think it was like 1967 probably, I think, somewhere in that area. He had, Sharon got married, and then Dave had a heart attack, and so they needed to move to a ranch house. And so they bought a ranch house in West Fair Acres, which was, I'm not sure, 120, I think 124 South 134 South 122nd Street. And that was right down the street from Burke High School. So they lived there, and our first anniversary, we all went to dinner at the French Cafe, and I was 8 months pregnant with Dana, and Marvin's father I know he had a heart attack right before Thanksgiving that year and died before Dana was born. And Marvin and I lived at Richland Park, which was on 120th and Dodge Street, after we got married. And and then, let's see, how many years after that? Not many. We moved Lil to our apartment, and we bought her house from her. And we lived in the house on 134 South 122nd Street until Callie was born. So in between, we had Nikki, who was May 6, 1977, and then we had Callie, who was August 6, 1982. And we'll go back to the next house we moved in later. But so Dana was born, and she was supposed to be born at the end of December, so I worked till the day she was born. And she was born December 4th. Well, I didn't see my dad very often until after Christmas because he worked every day and every night. My mother would come over on Sundays and bring dinner. So my Aunt Phyllis, who I love dearly, she's in her 80s, and she is still living. She's my Uncle Jerry's wife, and we have a very great relationship. She's always been there for me when I needed something. And because my mom and dad were working, she would come over and give Dana a bath and let me take a nap a few times a week. And I'll never forget that. I always loved dolls when I was little. And I took care of all my dolls, but not quite the same. So she was an experience, and when push comes to shove, I think we did a very good job on her. She is smart. She is raising 4 great children. She has a very loving husband, and she is definitely a general. And we just kind of listen to what she says and do it, I guess, sometimes. But anyway, she is still a very loving daughter, and I've always told all 3 of my daughters that you just don't realize how lucky you are to have 2 other sisters, and that your friends, especially growing up, your friends are just your friends, and you may not even talk to them after you go to college and come back or wherever you go the rest of your life. But your family will be there for you forever. And my other motto was with my kids is, the more you hate me, the better mom I am, because I always wanted my children not to feel nervous and anxious because they didn't know what was expected of them. So they knew exactly what was expected of them, and if it wasn't followed through with, the consequences did come in. We had groundings and car taken away, and I will say Dana was the hardest child to raise. I used to have black hair, and as you can see, I don't have black hair anymore. But it was worth it because she turned out to be a very smart, very communicative person with the community and her family, and sometimes not all positive, but communicative. It's, I think. Anyway, but she always said she would never get married, she would never have children. Well, Dana not only got married on July 15th, I want to say, let's see, 2000, I think it's 2005, I think, but I'm not positive. Anyway, she got married in July 15th, and she married Dave Weir, and they had a very large wedding, and it was, I thought, very beautiful, and it was all at the Hilton Hotel, and we had like 260 people or something. It was big. And after they built a house in Huntington Park, and then after they built it, they had Dana, and they also had Aaron in that house, and Aaron was born March 15th, 2010, which happened to be my 60th birthday. So that was my surprise. She was born in the morning, and that was my big surprise, and we've been bonded by our birthdays ever since. Although she's the only one that looks like our family, because the other three kids all look pretty much like Dave's family. Although some people say they look like mine, I think Erin looks most like my mother. Anyway, and back to Dana. So her name, Dana Brooke Cohn, what she was named after. Dana was for Dave Cohn. Brooke was for well, I gotta think about that. Marvin's father, Ben, and she was named for her great grandfathers, and that was that. And Erin was named. I don't know if Erin was for anything, but her name was. She was born 2 years after, about 2 years, 1.5 years, I guess, 1.5 years after my mother died, and she's named Erin Rosalie, which she's very proud of, and it makes me feel good every time I look at her. And then we have number 3, Kellen, who was also born in their first house, and he's 5 years old, so he was born in 2012, and his birthday is December 29th. And after he was born, I think they decided they had to start looking for schools, and they needed more space and everything, and they ended up buying a house that was in District 66. That's where they wanted the kids to go to school, and they remodeled it, and they had to live in an apartment, a 2-bedroom apartment, all summer, which was quite interesting. And then Isla ended up going to Oakdale School when she was 5 years old, and 2 years later, Erin went, and now this fall, Kellen will go to kindergarten, which is 2017. So, looking forward to that. And after Kellen was 3 years old, Dana just had to have another baby. She couldn't stand it, so she showed us, and first of all, she told us she needed a new car when Kellen was born, because it wasn't big enough, and we're like, what? Well, we figured that one out, and then she gave us an ultrasound, and it said we're on the bottom, and I looked at her like, are you out of your mind? And she just couldn't stand not having a baby. Well, Bo is Bowen Cohn. He's named after his grandpa Bob, who he just calls Bob, and his grampy Marvin. And that's how he has his name. And I'll tell you, I don't know what we would do without Bo, because he is the cutest little boy, and so funny and so smart. And at 2, he knew his alphabet, his letters, his colors, his numbers, he's just amazing. And he's a very sweet little boy. And back to Kellen, he's a little kind of bent out of shape when Bo was born, and he can be the sweetest little guy. You just have to take him by himself, and he doesn't have to compete with his 2 older sisters or his little baby brother. So we have and really enjoy him, and he loves our new dog, Piper, a lot, and he's really good with him, and I know he and Piper will be really good friends. And also, Aaron really likes Piper, and I was learning to like Piper, and Bo doesn't want anything to do with him yet, but he's too little. And anyway, Dana has given me and Dave, her husband, who is a lawyer, and right now he's at a lawyer or attorney for Douglas County, is a fabulous father. He spends all the time that my father didn't spend with me, he spends with his kids almost every weekend, and it's great to see them be surrounded by their parents so often, because as my life went, my mom was home, but my dad was working all the time, and we didn't get to spend that much time with him. We went on one family vacation. I guess maybe that's why I went to work, because that way I could spend a lot of time with my dad. And back to another story. I love my mom so much. I followed her around when I was home, and she told me she was going to have to go to jail if she didn't pay. I think I was 4 or 5 years old. If she didn't pay a parking ticket, so I had a big pink pig that I put my money in, and I went and broke my pig open. It was made out of plaster, and gave her all my money and told her, I don't want you to go to jail. So I remember that. And anyway, so we'll go with Nikki. When Nikki was born, my sister did Lamaze with me, and she just flew out. She was a scrawny little thing, and I thought, well, this must take Marvin's side of the family, take after, because she was so scrawny and skinny. And we named her Nicole, but she ended up being Pixie Girl, because she was always so funny and cute, and one never knew what she would do. One day we were eating lunch at our country club, Highland Country Club, and she was maybe 4 or 5 years old, and she was wandering around, and my mom was playing a game called Pan that had chips. And all the ladies went for lunch in a different room, and when they came back, all the chips, someone who had no chips had a full bowl of chips, and someone who had a lot of chips had no chips. And they never they didn't know how that happened. Well, somehow my mother was telling this story, and Nikki kind of looks up with this grin, and well, we found out how all the chips got changed. And pretty funny story, but Nikki, you just never knew what she was going to do. And we took Nikki and Dana on their first trip when Nikki was 5 and Dana was 7, and we went to Boston and Cape Cod. It was a great trip, and for all of us, and the kids loved swimming in the indoor pool, although they liked playing in the ocean. And Nikki became very fond of lobster tails, and we finally had to cut her off because I think they were $15.95 or something, a whole lobster, 1 pound lobster, and we just had a great trip. And I can't remember if Callie was born yet or not. I guess I will have to look at dates, but that was our first big family trip that we took before, or maybe Callie was born in at home, I don't know for sure. But anyway, we did go to Colorado to visit my sister Janice, and we went to South Dakota, and we were making sure that we were able to be with our family more than my parents were with theirs. But you gotta understand that everyone had to work hard. When Grandpa Friedman came to the United States, he didn't have a dime, and he had to work his way up. And I guess Grandpa worked at the Furniture Mart for when Mrs. B, later after Mrs. B bought it. And in 1948, although her son, she had three son-in-laws, and her son Louis came back, and she felt, my grandpa felt that he needed to move because there were so many bosses. And so he bought a Borsheim jewelry from a man, Mr. Fox, and that's when my dad, when he first worked in the carpet department at Nebraska Furniture Mart when he came back from the war. He didn't finish college, and then he went to work with, my grandpa bought the jewelry store, and they started that. Back to the jewelry store. When my grandpa was not a big thinker. He just would sell watch bands and be happy, and watches and so on. But my dad was a gambler in every sense of the word, and he decided he wanted to get more merchandise, because if you didn't have it, you couldn't sell it. And he became friendly with the lady Betty Sample. I was a little girl at the time. I was probably 12, 15 years old. And our store mainly had Jewish customers at the time. Other people would come in, but the base of our business was people that we knew. So when Betty Sample, I don't know how she met my dad, but she came in, and she started bringing her friends in, and they wanted really nice jewelry, and my dad got a line called Oscar Hyman, and that was the beginning of him enlarging his jewelry store. When I was 23 or so, when I was in high school, we moved across the street under King Fong. And then when I was 23, we moved from there to, right now, our present spot, which is in Regency Fashion Court. My dad bought out 80% of this store in 1989 by Warren Buffett, and 20% was left to my sister, myself, and my brother. At this point, I am the only one who basically owns some stock in the store, because my sister passed away and my brother sold his stock many, many years ago. And we'll get back to them later. But I guess then there was 5 years later, I waited till Nikki was going to first grade, and we had Callie, and her birthday is 8/6/82, and she was like a little, I called her Miss Blonde Shirley Temple, because she had curly blonde hair and big blue eyes, and she was so cute, and she was like our play toy. And the older girls were old enough to enjoy her, and I took her everywhere I went because she was so funny, and everyone loved her. Everyone loved being around her. She was just she was always at my side, because we were pretty much attached. The other girls, as her life went on, they were in school all day, and she was just, I had her all day. And the only day I worked when they were growing up was on Saturdays, except for Christmas. And I always had a babysitter full time at Christmas time. And also, after Callie was born, Peggy Wagner, who we called Saint Peggy, came to work for us. She was a nursing student at Creighton. She graduated #1 in her class. And also Liesl Dean was my other babysitter, and she was only 11 years older than Callie when she started babysitting. And she would be my babysitter at night mainly, and Peggy would come every Saturday day. And Peggy graduated #1 in her class and ended up marrying, she moved to Parkland Hospital to get her degree, and ended up marrying a doctor, and moved to Maryland. And she has 2 children now in college, and they are just adorable, great children. And she was a big part of our life for a long time. And Liesl just had her first child get married, and she looks just like she did when she babysat. She hasn't changed at all, and she still talks in a squeaky little voice. And we have remained friends, although she's had 4 children and is very busy too, and has never really lived in Omaha, but in outskirts of Omaha now, about an hour and 20 minutes away or so. But she's into, her parents still live here, and we do see them on and off. And Nikki, well, we'll get on to Nikki. I guess we have enough of Dana. But Dana was a troublemaker and always testing me the whole growing up process. And I stuck to my guns, and she always would say at 18 she was gonna buy a Ferrari and leave forever, but that didn't happen. And by 18 she pretty much had grown up and act like a normal human being. But children are testing you every day. Don't forget that. And I told all my children, you will never lie, cheat, or steal. It's just not in our vocabulary. And all the girls went to Sunday school, and they all had bat mitzvahs, and we had all the holidays that mostly at my house until later on. In the last 10 or 12 years, I think we've kind of branched out to my niece Andrea's, and we've had Thanksgiving every year in the last probably 20. I did all the Thanksgivings till maybe 15 years ago, and then my sister-in-law Sharon, Marvin's sister, started having Thanksgivings, but now Andrea or Suzanne, her daughters, have them, or but we try to have family holidays as much as we can, because we're usually in Arizona, and Callie just moved to Denver, and Nikki and Callie live in Denver, and one never knows where we'll be, but that's Nikki. Nikki had a great life. She was lots of fun. She was street smart, and she does have a little temper, but we love each other, and we have a great relationship. And then there was Callie. So Callie was born 5 years later, and she ended up going to art school at the School of the Art Institute. And she is very much an artist, and she did ceramics, and then she made the most beautiful cakes for 5 years in Omaha, and now she just moved to Denver, and we're waiting to see what she's going to do. And I forgot to say that Nikki graduated from the University of Colorado, and her senior year went on Semester at Sea, which is a trip all the way around the world. And she loves to travel, and I guess I want to say Dana's graduated with, she graduated with honors in public policy from Wisconsin, and she went to Harvard for graduate school, and then she came back and got her doctorate at the University of Nebraska and taught in public policy. But after she got married, she basically she worked for some nonprofits, and she spends all her time basically raising her children. And she is taking classes in interior design at Metro Tech. So we'll see what happens with her. And back to Callie, we talk every day, and while she was in Omaha, ate dinner over at our house every summer for a very long time until now she moved to Denver. She lived in Chicago 10 years. Nikki lived in New York 10 years, but Dana basically has always lived in Omaha, except for her years at school, and she loves Omaha, and she has many, many friends, and they all hang out together when they can or with their kids, and I'm very proud of all my girls. They all have, I feel that was my job, and I feel like I did a very good job. I'm very pleased with how everyone turned out, and I'm always excited to hear the next thing that's going on in any of their families, and I love them all dearly. And that is my basic life. I love my husband, my children. They are number one. And lately I've been feeling if the people I know do not bring joy to me, I need to find other people that do. Life is way too short. I feel like yesterday I was a teenager, and I want to enjoy every minute that I have, and I make every day count. And I know my children, that is Dana, Nikki, and Callie, always say, slow down, do this, do that. But it's very hard for me to slow down when I have so much to do. And I didn't mention that Nikki got married. It'll be 3 years, October 18th, and she married Joe Kennepel, and they have such a loving, wonderful marriage. It's just makes me happy every time I'm with them. And back to Callie, we'll see what happens. She's not married yet. And I just want to talk about a few more things. First of all, as I said, my goal was to make sure that my family, all my children, all loved each other and all would be friends their whole lives, because they are finally realizing how important it is, I think. And it takes a long time, so if you're mad at somebody in your family, just get over it. It's not that important. And if you feel you have a friend that's that important to you, you need to talk about it. Just walking away does not solve any problems for anybody. And I always feel that you need to work out, if it's worth it, you need to take the time to fix it. I used to be a very nervous person and worry about people and so on, but because I didn't know how they felt about me, but not anymore. And if I feel that way, I ask them. Life is very important, and I'm going to get to the most important thing that I do besides taking care of my family. I believe that you've heard the word mitzvah, that you need to do mitzvah in your life. The reason I like my religion so well, I want to be Jewish because I want to be a person who follows the Torah, who does good deeds, who looks at the 10 Commandments and follows them, because they were put there for a reason. They're put there to make people honest, good people. And things are in our religion that are put there, but for reasons, not just because you have to do this because it says so. You do it because it makes you a better person. And that's how I feel today, that I feel that I have embraced my religion, not that I have to go to services every week, but that I follow the rules of the Jewish people. And that is back to mitzvah, meaning giving to others, helping people who aren't as lucky as you have been. And people always go, woe is me, but they don't realize that what they're complaining about is nothing. There are people who do not get food every day, and there are people who need lots and lots of help through their lives. There are children who cannot pick their parents and end up in foster care, or no food, or no bed, no refrigerator. I go through all different kinds of agencies to try to improve not only children's well-being, but people who honestly are the working poor who just can't make enough money to feed their families. Um, I, my parents, when my dad sold the business, he put money into the Eichenross Friedman Foundation, which I now run. And I take it very seriously, but on the other hand, it's the best gift my parents could have given me. I want to help anyone. I've always wanted to help anyone. Whoever I can, that's just me. I wanted to keep my family together. I tried, they call me the glue. My aunts, my uncles, my cousins, I always concentrate on family first and then everyone else. But through this foundation, I have given a computer to a child who is so smart but doesn't have a computer to learn. Given a refrigerator to a child who had to take a drug that needed to be refrigerated and they didn't have one. I have given a college education to children. I have given grade school children. I've given the whole school, bought tons of toiletries that we take for granted, toothpaste, toilet paper, things that we don't even think about, clothes, books, you name it. And I have tried to concentrate on children, the elderly, feeding people. These are my main causes, but someone needs surgery and doesn't have any money to have surgery. So you think about, don't let your life be run by people who say you have to have this kind of shoes or you got to have that kind of shirt to be popular. Your personality will make you popular. And people who care too much about material things end up either poor because they can't afford them or have no self-esteem because they haven't done anything for anyone else but themselves. Selfish people are not people who care about other people. You need to care about animals and people and make this world a better place. It's gotten to be, in this day and age, terrorists and just people who take a gun and shoot people and don't understand how precious life really is. We're put here, somebody put us here for some reasons. We're put here for a reason. We're put here to make a better place for people to live, to all over the world feed starving people and give them medical care and anything that will help everyone else have a better life. And you need to think about this as you're growing up, that it's very important for people to take a person because they're a good person, not because they wear great clothes or because they can do things for you. You want them because honestly they love you and you love them, no matter who they are. And that's what life is all about. It's about being a good person and doing good things for other people. You don't have to be asked to do it. You just do it. If someone dies, you go take food over. If you know someone needs help with something, you just do it. You don't have to tell them who did it. You just go and do it. My dad, that's how my dad was. Someone would come in the store, and that's where I learned this from. Somebody would come in the store and say, Ike, I need $1, or Ike, I need $10,000, or whatever. My dad never said no. Even if he didn't get if they said they'd pay him back and didn't give him his money back. He just wanted to help other people. He could have cared less, and this is a great story. Every time he bought a car, he bought it from a different customer. So one time he bought a Chrysler, and it was a Chrysler LeBaron. And it was just a burgundy car and, normal old car. And he goes through the car wash. It was not that old. He goes through the car wash, and the back fender falls off. He gets up, puts a fender in his car, and drives home. And that was it. He could have cared less. He drove it without the fender. but maybe somebody else put it on for him one day. But he just didn't care about those things. He only wanted a TV, so he could watch football games, basketball games, baseball games, any game he could bet money on, he watched. He loved the horse races. He really was my mentor in many ways, and in other ways, not. But in his ways I passed up his things that were not positive and looked at all the great things he did. And let me tell you, if we could all do as many things as Grandpa Ike did, and for other people, it would be it'd be incredible. People from all walks of life loved my dad no matter what. He was an amazing person, a one of a kind, and my mother was a one of a kind because finally, when her 50s, everyone went to Rochester, Minnesota to Mayo Clinic for checkups, and her final answer was her biggest problem was my father. And it was a pretty big laugh for all of us, but he was a character, but he was very loving, and it took him about 60 some years to tell me he loved me, but he did. And because he was raised with family who didn't show emotions, so it was hard. He learned finally, the importance, and he did everything to extreme, but that's made him the person that he was. And lastly, I want to just say that I had a sister, Janice, who was 2 years older than me, and she died with 5 children from 10 to 21 at age 47 of breast cancer. It was her second bout with it. Originally, my great-grandmother, who on my Grandma Wasserman's side, her mother had breast cancer and died. Her 7 daughters all had breast cancer. It's been going through generations, but so far there hasn't been a gene found. So always keep that in mind, to just get your checkups, and anyway, her children are very, very close to me, all 5 of them. I've tried. I was so heartbroken when Janice died, but what's kept me going all this time is when I do something, I think, how would she want me to do it? What would she do? I mean, Janice was a totally different person than me. Janice and Dana are somewhat the same personality in many ways, in some ways not, but the oldest child is got their own thoughts. They're more I guess more smart about life, I think, than I was just living for the minute, and they were more living for the future, I guess, in one way. But anyway, that's Janice and I were very close. She'd yell at me or I'd yell at her, and 2 minutes later it'd be over. It was never anything that important that we yelled about. And so I didn't know that there were families who people didn't speak to each other, sisters and brothers. Very different learning that, because we were always very close. My brother was 5 years younger than us. He kind of was in a different generation. He had a rough life, and as far as emotionally, he was a great person as a business person, but as a brother, he just had other things in mind, and that wasn't what he was going to be. We had a relationship somewhat our whole life, but very sparse. He died of a heart attack. It was 2 years ago, June 21st, and it was pretty sad, but on the other hand, there was not much that I tried several times during his life to help him, but he just couldn't handle help from me. He just wanted to try to do everything on his own, and he was a drug addict, and he eventually died of of a heart attack due to drugs, and he just couldn't stop doing drugs. So let that be a lesson to you all that there's a reason why drugs are illegal, and that's the story on Alan. We had great times growing up, but as he went to college and started with marijuana and ended up with heroin, it's a very sad story, but you need to know this story because he had he had somewhat the same extreme behaviors as my father. My father was an alcoholic also. So they both had obsessions with different things, and you just gotta be in the middle of whatever you do. You can't, if you do a diet that isn't crazy. Just do a diet cutting back calories. That's how you lose weight in exercising. I'm kind of the middle of the road, as they say, and the turtle. I take everything slowly. So does Marvin, and that's how we've been married 43 years. And yeah, we do yell at each other once in a while, but not important things. On important things, we stand together, and and we say we love each other every night. Some nights it's kind of hard because living with someone for 43 years, you'll see, all of you, but we at the end of the day, we definitely have our times, and we definitely have done, I think, a good job. Well, to end this whole speech, I want to talk to, first of all, my grandchildren. And I want to tell you that I just am so proud of all that you've done so far in your little lives. Your mother and father have taught you to be such polite, kind, caring children, and I know you're going to go on through your life and just make me smile. I just love you. Know that I love you so much, and Grandpa loves you so much, and we will always cherish the times that we share with you. I just want to live to 100 or more. I want to tell you that it's very selfish not to take care of yourself. You need to always take care of yourself and eat the right foods and work and exercise, and that way you'll feel good. And if you feel like something's bothering you, your mental health is just important as your physical health. So don't feel like you can't go to a psychologist or a psychiatrist, which I'll never forget Marvin's mother saying that no Cohn will ever go to a psychiatrist. I'm looking at her like, what? I mean, that's just as important or more important than your physical health. So you need to be strong and self-confident, and I just know you're so on the way to be this kind of person. And always, politeness is such an important virtue to have. When someone does something nice for you, you need to say thank you, which you all do. I'm so proud of you that you do. And I am so proud of my parents for doing everything they've done, and my whole family. I'm so proud of my children. I can't say enough that this is my life. This is why I'm here. I'm here to enjoy as well as to teach. And I can't say enough about how much I love you all. And I just wish you all a wonderful, productive, caring, loving life. Amen. I do want to talk about my son-in-laws. I'm a very, very lucky mother-in-law. Dave and Dane have been married 12 years, and I think Dave is finally comfortable with me. I have always thought, Dave, that you were a very, very smart, down-to-earth guy, and that's exactly a great virtue to have. And you and Dana just are meant for each other. The minute I met you, you're both very similar, and you're the yin and yang. So you're the best father I've ever known in my life. You are so caring to your children, and it just makes me so happy when you're around them and taking care of them. And that's something that never happened because it was just a different time in our day, and fathers went to work all day and didn't take time off to do anything their children were doing. And it's so sad to miss all those things, and I'm very, very proud of everything that you do, and I just want you to know it. And then 3 years ago, Nikki married Joe, and I just think the world of you, Joe. I know that you and Dave are very different, but you get along great, and I appreciate all you do for me, and we have a lot of good times together when we're in Denver. So, and you take such great care of your wife, as does Dave. Dave is a saint because Dana is a tough cookie, but it's worth it. That's all I can tell you, Dave. So you guys are just great additions to our family, and I love you both very much.